34 years ago, a single spark lit more than just a fire. It ignited one of the most haunting mysteries in Texas history. A case so cold, it would take generations of detectives, DNA breakthroughs, and even an act of Congress to uncover the truth. It's a cold Friday night in Austin, December 6th, 1991. The night is winding down. The streets are quiet, just the faint buzz of neon signs and the hum of passing cars. Inside a small frozen yogurt shop, I can't believe it's yogurt, two teenage girls are getting ready to close. They laugh, clean up, count the register. Just another shift before the weekend. 17-year-old Eliza Thomas is one of them. A bright, ambitious student. An athlete, a clarinet player, a dreamer with a love for country music, and art sketchbooks full of ideas. Beside her is Jennifer Harbison, also 17, a track star and part-time worker at the shop. Outgoing, kind, the type of girl everyone liked to be around. Her younger sister Sarah, just 15, had stopped by to wait for a ride home. With her is her best friend, Amy Ayers, 13, an animal lover who spent her afternoons caring for her future Farmers of America lamb named Tootie, and dreaming of becoming a veterinarian. 4 girls. One ordinary night. But before the shop could close, someone came through the back door. Detectives believe a man had been allowed to use the restroom earlier, and may have wedged that door open. A couple, leaving around 11 p.m., noticed 2 men sitting inside, whispering, avoiding eye contact. Around midnight, an Austin patrol officer saw smoke rising from the small yogurt shop. He radioed it in. Fire crews raced to the scene. When the flames were finally knocked down, they found something no one in Austin would ever forget. The bodies of 4 young females. They were found inside the back storage room of the shop, bound, gagged, and nude. The fire had been set to destroy everything, and nearly it did. The culprit, or culprits, had vanished. The scene told a story of control, calculation, and cruelty. Not the work of kids, but of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. That night, Austin lost its innocence, and a question began to echo across the city. Who could do something like this, and why? After the disturbing incident, Austin police launched one of the largest investigations the city had ever seen. A special task force was created. Detectives, analysts, even the FBI. Everyone wanted answers, but months turned into years, and the trail went cold. Then, in 1999, 8 years after the fire, police made a shocking announcement. 4 men had been arrested for the yogurt shop tragedy. Robert Springsteen, Michael Scott, Maurice Pierce, and Forrest Wellborn. They had all been teenagers back in 1991. Maurice Pierce had been questioned shortly after the killings when police caught him at a nearby mall with a .22 caliber pistol, the same type of firearm thought to be involved in the case. But back then, there wasn't enough evidence to hold the men, and all 4 were released. Years later, a new team of investigators decided to take another look. They brought the young men back in, this time determined to get answers. Under the pressure of long interrogations, Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott confessed. Their words would become the cornerstone of the case. But there was one problem. Both men would later say those confessions were coerced. There were no recordings from the original interviews, no proof of what the detectives had said or what they might have led the suspects to believe. It was impossible to know where the truth ended, and suggestion began. Eventually, charges were dropped against Pierce and Wellborn. That left Springsteen and Scott. The prosecution's entire case came down to the words of Springsteen and Scott. No physical evidence, no eyewitnesses, just 2 confessions that pointed at each other. Both were convicted and sentenced for the crimes. But years later, their convictions were overturned. The reason? A violation of their 6th Amendment rights. At trial, each man's confession had been used against the other, but neither was allowed to take the stand to be cross-examined. Even so, prosecutors weren't ready to give up. The district attorney at the time, Rosemary Laneberg, prepared to try them again, and ordered new forensic testing using a cutting-edge method called YSDR DNA analysis, which isolates male DNA. The results stunned everyone. A partial male DNA profile was recovered from one of the victims, but it didn't match any of the 4 men who had been accused. Still, the state pushed forward, hoping for a match. But by 2009, with no new suspects and no DNA connection, the charges were dropped. But freedom didn't bring closure. One of the detectives involved, Hector Palenko, had already been accused in another high-profile case of coercing false confessions, a chilling echo of what Springsteen and Scott had claimed happened to them. 18 years after the fire, the so-called solved case unraveled completely, and the yogurt shop tragedy, 4 innocent girls who met a senseless fate, remained what it had been from the very start, an unsolved mystery. More than 30 years passed. The case had gone cold, buried under boxes of old reports and fading memories. But in 2022, Detective Daniel Jackson of the Austin Police Department's Cold Case Unit decided to take another look. A new generation of forensic technology, and a relentless hope that something had been missed, drove him to determine the truth. Jackson and a team of forensic experts began re-examining every piece of surviving evidence. One item stood out. A 380 cartridge recovered from the yogurt shop floor the night of the tragedy. It had been tested before, but this time, the cartridge was entered into the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, a massive digital database linking crimes through microscopic marks on bullets and casings. In June 2025, the system returned a hit. The cartridge from the Austin yogurt shop matched shell casings from an unsolved 1998 crime in Kentucky, a violent case with eerie similarities to what had happened in Austin. Detective Jackson knew he was onto something. Investigators expanded their search, comparing DNA from the Austin scene to profiles from violent crimes in other states. Then, in August, came the moment everyone had waited for. A call from South Carolina authorities. Forensic evidence had spoken. A partial YSDR DNA profile, extracted from beneath Amy Ayer's fingers, matched Robert Eugene Brashers, a man already linked to a 1990 violent death in Greenville. And the match didn't stop there. A .380 bullet casing recovered from a drain at the crime scene showed the same unique microscopic markings as the pistol Brashers used to end his own life during a police standoff in Kennett, Missouri, back in 1999. At a press conference, Detective Jackson's voice trembled with emotion. "Amy's final moments on this earth were to solve this case for us," he said. "It's because of her fighting back. After decades of unanswered questions, it was Amy, the youngest of the 4 girls, whose final act of resistance helped unmask their killer. For years, Brash's name had floated through law enforcement circles for various crimes. A drifter with a violent past, moving across states, leaving terror in his wake. Recently, advances in DNA testing began linking Brashers to brutal, unsolved crimes across the country. In 2018, Missouri authorities connected him to the 1998 incident involving Sherry Scherer and her 12-year-old daughter Megan, who lost their lives in their home near Portageville. Both were subjected to unspeakable acts, the same pattern of violence, the same ruthless precision. He was also linked to the 1990 death of Genevieve Zitricki, a 28-year-old woman found deceased in her bathtub in Greenville, South Carolina, and to the 1997 case of a 14-year-old girl in Memphis, Tennessee. Each crime connected by DNA, each one pointing to the same man, a predator who managed to stay invisible in plain sight. He was the kind of man who could charm his way into a neighborhood and disappear just as quickly. In January 1999, police finally cornered him at a Missouri motel. After an hours-long standoff, Robert Eugene Brashers turned the firearm on himself, the very same make and model later tied to the Austin tragedy. In an act of final betrayal, he took his own life before justice could reach him. But the evidence he left behind, the DNA, the firearm, the pattern, finally told the story he never would. And after more than 30 years of unanswered questions, the city of Austin could finally close the chapter on one of its darkest nights. 4 teenage girls, Eliza Thomas, Jennifer Harbison, Sarah Harbison, and Amy Ayers, their lives cut short in 1991, their voices silenced. In the years since the yogurt shop tragedy, time had become both a thief and a witness. But even decades later, the echo of that night in Austin still reached the halls of power. On August 3, 2022, President Joe Biden signed into law the Homicide Victims' Families' Rights Act of 2021, legislation inspired in part by this very case. The act ensures that cold cases like the yogurt shop tragedy are never forgotten, that they're reopened, re-examined, and retested using the most advanced forensic science available. Evil may hide for decades, but it always leaves a trace. If you'd like to see more true crime stories where justice finally speaks, then you'll want to see what's next. Just click the video on your screen. We'll meet you over there.